So I know Laura mentioned when she reached out to you this weekend before the class that we're doing a grocery store tour next Monday. So the Monday that we have off of this class, we're going to do a grocery store tour at the Safeway on Webster Street here. We chose that location because it's close to our normal spot. But basically, we're going to show you guys how to shop on a budget while purchasing healthy ingredients. And there's 4 main things we're going to go over during the grocery tour. Is how to recognize and purchase whole grains. We're going to go over buying fruits and vegetables on a budget, so figuring out what it'd be wise to get fresh or frozen or canned and what's the differences between that. We're going to talk about comparing unit pricing, so looking at serving size and how much an ingredient is and really see what is the best deal for you. And then we're going to also go over reading ingredient labels, food ingredient labels. So it'll be a really fun tour. We're only limiting it to 12 spots. Right now we're going to do 2 tours, one on next Monday and the other on next Saturday, and we want to have 6 at each, just because we don't want to crowd the grocery store. People are shopping. But we're able to kind of mesh those numbers if need be, if you can only make a certain day or whatnot. But we really would love for you to be here. We actually have a couple incentives. We're going to be doing a $10 challenge where we give you $10 and you're going to purchase foods that meet the whole grains and a few requirements that we have going into it. So it's kind of fun. We're going to have recipes for you and give you not these bags, but other takeaway bags. And yeah, we have a sign-up sheet in the back. Just put your name, contact, and what day you would prefer. Pardon? 5:30. Yeah, so next Monday will be at 5:30 regular time, same as this class. And then the following Saturday, so Saturday before our next class, will be at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, and if you can't make it, that's totally fine. It's an optional bonus class. It's not going to be counted towards any missed classes, so if you can't make it to the class, don't worry about it. It doesn't count against you.
Yeah, fun thing to do, get outside the classroom. And there's little note cards right by it that say the time and date, so you don't have to worry about remembering. And we want to meet at the produce aisle if you do make it. So now I just want to recap from last week. Have any of you made any fruits or vegetables and prepared it differently than you usually do, using the methods we talked about? Do any of you have examples? Yeah?
You have to roast the vegetables.
Yeah, roast. There was, what else was there?
I did my mushrooms.
Collard greens.
Raw. Oh, roasted.
I did raw, but I don't like with the little extra.
Yeah. Mushrooms are good. You can eat them raw.
It was like a meat.
Yeah. I've had mushrooms as a burger too. Grill it. Mushrooms are very versatile.
I took fresh lemons, put lemon juice in the pan, and then I used a microplaner on my fresh ginger. Put that in there, sauteed that, sauteed some garlic, put the kale in there, make the kale very happy.
Yeah.
Be very happy.
Yeah. Oh, very flavorful.
You guys can order my house. I got lots of garlic.
Did anybody steam anything? Steam any of their vegetables you did?
I will.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My station is there.
Ah, perfect. We actually have asparagus in our snack today, which we'll go over in a second. And then, did you guys store any of your fruits and vegetables differently? Kind of change your usual habits? Yeah.
Quit putting the potatoes next to the onions and garlic.
Exactly. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, well, the onions, because they were not good for the vegetables first.
Yeah.
So I put it and I put it down.
Okay. Cool. Better than plastic bags.
I thought I was buying flat leaf parsley, but it turns out to be coriander, and I had too much of it, and I was wondering what should I do to store it so it doesn't just turn yellow. Do I make a pesto out of that?
Coriander.
You can make a pesto out of it, or you could wash it, pat it between 2 paper towels, and stick it in a plastic bag in the freezer, and it'll still be usable. But make sure it's dry.
You can
Okay.
also make a pesto
Yeah.
out of cilantro.
Cilantro?
Yeah, cilantro and coriander are the same.
You can also make a pesto out of kale. I've done that.
Even I do a really nice Mediterranean salad where it's just parsley or cilantro you could also use, and it's just olive oil, lemon, and then some tomatoes. It's really good, like a bruschetta type thing, but cold. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got something, I don't know what it was because there was no label on it, but I thought it was chives. And I put that in an egg dish with some other vegetables, and that worked out okay.
Yeah, that's.
So I don't know what it was.
Yeah, good. It worked. It tastes good. Great. Okay. Did you guys make any trips to farmers markets this last week? Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys. Good. Good. Great. We're gonna go over our snack really quick, and then we'll get into the lesson today.
So today's class, Alana's going to be talking about a few different topics, but one of those topics is whole grains. And in our snack today, we use some whole grain brown rice. Generally speaking, whole grains, they're the brown version, so whole wheat is the darker bread, brown rice has more fiber, and it keeps you full a little bit longer. So what we did is I sauteed some veggies beforehand. They're in the kitchen warming back up. But the vegetables that I used, well, first I chopped up some onions. I diced them and put olive oil and the onions in a frying pan and sauteed those just for a little bit till the onions softened. I also added some garlic. So I chopped up the garlic nice and fine. I also added some of this, asparagus. So asparagus, it's in season right now, so it's just starting to come out at the market. It'll be out for the next couple months. And fresh asparagus, when it's in season at the markets, is so much better than asparagus other times of year. A couple of tips about asparagus. The ends are kind of woody and tough, so you want to trim them off. If you're in a hurry, you can just take a knife, right about here, chop them off. But another trick that you can do, if you just use your fingers, right where it wants to snap on its own, that's going to get rid of the tough woody part, and then this is the tender part that's easier for eating. And then these, you also, to keep them fresh longer, you can put them in a glass of water upright in the refrigerator, and they'll stay fresh and hydrated a little bit longer. We also put some broccoli in, so chop this up. And broccoli, it's one of those vegetables where sometimes people neglect the bottom half of it. It is a little bit tougher, so I might, chop off this bottom part right here and get rid of that. But the stuff in the middle, as long as you chop it up into smaller pieces, you can throw that in the frying pan or in the steamer as well. And the middle section here, it's perfectly good to eat, and it's good for you as well. We also threw in some carrots. So these are some nice, pretty small carrots. Generally speaking, the smaller and younger the carrots are, the sweeter they're going to be. These ones, they're organic. They're young carrots, so I didn't even peel them. I just washed them really well, scrubbed them to make sure there's no dirt on them, and sliced them up, and also threw them in the frying pan. And then lastly, we also added some beets. So you'll notice when the snack comes out that it's got a very bright purple color on the rice now because purple beets make everything else around them turn purple. So with these beets, I did peel them because the outer peel can be kind of tough. And then chopped them up finely as well and threw them in the frying pan. One thing that I did as soon as I brought the beets home, I got them yesterday at the Jacqueline Square Farmers Market. As soon as I brought them home, I chopped the tops off because with beets, if you leave the tops on when they're in the refrigerator, these tops, they're going to continue sucking water out of the root, and then your beets will kind of get soft and kind of limp. So I removed the tops right away. And after I cut off the tops, I put them right in a bowl of water, cleaned them off, rinsed them, and then put them in a bag. That way they could be saved and eaten later. I was thinking about putting them in the stir fry, but for me, the beet greens, they're a little tough to be stir fried. I really like them in soup. So I set them aside. Someone can take them home later and try them in soup rather than throwing them in the stir fry.
And did you toast anything?
Oh, yes. We also toasted some walnuts. So to sort of complete the meal, we wanted to add a healthy protein source. So you could add, like if you wanted to make it into fried rice, you could add eggs to it. You could sprinkle some nuts on top. You could add some sort of lean meat like chicken if you wanted to. I didn't put the nuts in because I wanted to make sure there aren't any folks with nut allergies. Is there anyone here with a nut allergy? Okay. So the walnuts, I just put them in a frying pan for about 5 minutes and kept stirring them around to make sure they didn't burn. And that gives them just sort of a nice toasted flavor.
Yeah. So we'll be serving that up after I go over the whole grain section. It'll be nice and warm. We got it in the oven right now. Yeah, so our objectives today, what we're going to be going over first is kind of talking about food as a fuel source and how some food is a good fuel source, some food may not affect our body in as positive a way. We have a little fun analogy with that. And then we're going to talk about processed foods and the different degrees of processed foods and how that may affect our health. And then we're going to talk briefly about sugar-sweetened beverages and then end on whole grains. Yeah, so I guess let's get started. So first, like I said, we eat food because it's an energy source. It gives us life, helps us sustain life, and we need essential nutrients to survive. So we wanted to compare that kind of fun little thing to a cruise ship. So you have two different posters here, but so a cruise ship requires fuel in order to operate, and a certain kind of fuel in order to keep its speed and operate at its highest potential. But if you give the cruise ship it's not the right fuel source, it may slow the ship down, it may cause damages and have effects in the long run and even break it in some ways. So you can kind of think of that in a sense of our body and how some foods, it's great fuel source and some foods may not be our best fuel source. So I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think are some foods that are a good fuel source for our bodies? And it can be very broad, it doesn't have to be vegetables, yep, and fruits. You could, or for vegetables, they have a lot of fiber, have a lot of important nutrients for you. Same with fruits. If you know any nutrients that go along with it, why you think your body needs it, go ahead. Nuts, good source of protein, good source of healthy fats.
Complex carbohydrates.
Complex carbohydrates, so whole grains. It doesn't have that quick sugar spike. It kind of sustains you, keeps you fuller longer. Prunes, yeah. Prunes are very good. It's a fruit. Really good for our digestive system. It has important vitamins in it that are really good. Raisins as well. Yep, antioxidants. Snappies, yep. I kind of think if you're eating fruits and vegetables, that is like medicine. We could go on and say, blueberries have this fruit has that, but they are so packed with such goodness that they're kind of medicine in a sense. So what do you think are kind of foods that might be bad fuel for our body? White rice? Yeah.
Any processed
Trans fats, so fried foods, maybe.
processed food?
Hydrogenated oils, things with trans fats, those are in definitely type eggs. Some have problem with eggs because cholesterol, it depends your own cholesterol levels with that.
Sugar?
But eggs are good protein sources. Sugar, so think of foods with high sugar and fat. So ice cream, cookies, sodas, banana pudding. How about
fruits that have much natural sugar?
Yeah, well, one thing I've mentioned before in other classes is pomegranates. They are some of the highest antioxidant packed fruits, very good for you. But if you drink the pomegranate juice, they have almost the same sugar levels as soda. So I say eat as many pomegranates as you want, but stick to the whole, eat the whole fruit as opposed to getting it in juice form. Unless you can contain yourself and only have a little amount, because it is really delicious. What about caffeine sources out there?
Coffee.
Decaf coffee? Yeah. How about energy drinks? And those kind of drinks?
What about the Arizona drinks? Are they okay?
It might be on here. Those have a lot of sugar in them. It might. We'll go over the sugar.
Tea don't have a lot of sugar in it.
Green tea, it's no sweetener at all. Unless you're buying canned and it's added sugar
So
to
kind
it.
of a big container, like.
I'd have to read the ingredient labels because I know you can buy
High
it
in sugar.
without added
It's
sugar.
not that high in sugar.
But
Yeah, those you want to be careful with. Green tea. It's something that a lot of times people will sneak a lot of sugar into, especially like the bigger brands that also make sodas too, like Lipton and things like that. That's why a lot is gonna go into some activities where we're actually looking at labels on things because it's really the best way to tell.
Should we not go no more than 3 grams of sugar? Is that, when you look at
for a drink, for like a drink,
Yeah.
that could be good. That's a good way to go about it. Pick like a grams of sugar that you want to stay under. Yeah, we'll recommend later. We'll talk about it, but sticking to water is really great, and we'll suggest some fun ways to spice up your water and make it kind of fun. But
Crystal Light? That's not good. Too much sugar in it, right?
it's got artificial sugars and some artificial.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But
it's best to make your own fruit juice?
make your own fruit juice. You can throw in, if you have a juicer, throw in veggies. Yeah. Milk is even better than choosing a lot of the, sugar sweetened beverages. That's why on the My Plate it has like that dairy on there. It's, I don't drink milk at every meal, but I think it's a good way to suggest as opposed to consuming sodas or other drinks. But we definitely water. You want to make sure you have at least 8 glasses a day.
Almond milk, rice milk.
Yeah.
What about soy milk?
7 grain milk.
Oh, so soy milk is okay, Vita soy
Vitasoy is okay, but you're better off getting.
with the red, the
Get
original?
soy cream. Get soy cream, it's better.
Yeah.
It tastes better, it's not it's soy cream.
Oh, soy drink, that's the one I buy. It's okay with the vanilla.
You guys listed a lot of the great foods and a lot of foods that may be harmful, and so the ones that we do are bad fuel. They're usually high in trans fats. They have a lot of sodium in it. They may have a lot of sugar. If you notice, there's like a common theme. And if you're consuming large amounts, that damage we see is kind of chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, and that sort. But you can definitely avoid them with sticking to a proper diet and eating all the essential nutrients that you need in life to, keep your health right and then age, you're aging and all that. So that was just a good analogy to try and think about how you consume your body and, good foods versus poor foods. But any more questions? We'll go over more of the beverages in a little bit. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh. Yeah, get the first thing you drink in the morning? Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. A lot of people recommend lemon and water first thing in the morning. It's really good. Just kind of wake you up.
I heard that plain water is the best thing from Dick Gregory is the best thing to put in your body the first thing you wake up without teas and sugar.
Yeah.
The Dick Gregory, he suggests that just plain water, hot water, and you drink cups of water that
Exactly.
it brings up, because I've tried it, and it brings up the mucus and
Yeah.
coughs and all kinds of things.
And sometimes when you wake up, your mouth kind of has an off taste. And so get that going. And then sometimes, I know some people don't eat breakfast in the morning. And as a nutritionist, we recommend, starting your day off right with a good meal. And I've noticed if I drink water first thing, I feel hungry. And it gets, I'm hungry now.
What about, which is a friend of mine, I guess it's like a cleanser, you get two limes, 1 lemon, a cucumber, and you slice them, put it in water.
Yeah.
And you don't eat the lemon or nothing like that. You just drink the water and you pour it in your glass, and then you can also just, when you finish the water, you pour more water into it.
That's it.
And then you can also add, if you like to taste it more, you can add more the cucumbers and lime
And it's a perfect way to increase water intake. We were going to talk about that by
the body tissue fat too.
You know, I wouldn't necessarily say so, but you're adding vitamin C, you're adding really good vitamins and flavors in there for you. So it's definitely a healthy and good way to start your day off, and gets you to drink more water when you
What about
flavor it.
vinegar or water, like after you eat dinner? Is that okay? Because I heard it's supposed to have fatty
I've heard
tissue.
apple cider vinegar.
Apple cider vinegar, you chicken.
Frank's apple cider vinegar, okay, that has the mother in the jar itself. If you put about an ounce of it in the, like about a tablespoon in your cup.
Right.
Put water on top of it, hot water, and drink that. That's what I drink for breakfast before I eat anything.
Yeah.
I start the day with that, and it's really, really good.
Apple cider?
Yeah, it's apple, Frank's apple cider, it's apple cider vinegar.
Oh, apple cider vinegar.
And you put that in the water, and you heat it up. So
Oh,
I
you heat your-
There's a bunch of remedies and things people have discovered that works for them, and it's great. And it kind of just goes with what you have available to you, your budget, and all that kind of thing.
And they said, as I experienced high blood pressure, like eating salads in the morning instead of oatmeal, the traditional American ham, bacon, and eggs. Eating a salad in the morning will give you great energy with toast, whole grain, the fiber toast, and it's good for your skin. If you have a juicer or a blender, just put your vegetables, your fruits in there, and you'll be beautiful and ageless in no time.
Yeah, there's no wrong with that. There's definitely we think breakfast foods, you have to have a breakfast, but there is really no authority to that. You can do whatever you want, and if you're down to eat a salad, I mean, sometimes I have leftovers. Okay, now we're going to talk about processed foods. So we'll notice with a lot of the foods that kind of aren't the best fuel sources for us, tend to be processed, have gone through changes in the fat, become trans fats, they've had added sodium and all that. So we want to talk about processed foods. So I wanted to ask you guys, there's a wide range of what could be considered a processed food. What do you guys consider to be a processed food?
Cheese.
Yeah?
Box of cereal.
Box of cereal, frozen. Chips?
Things that are in packages.
Packages, yeah. Yeah?
In a can.
In a can? So anything that's manipulated from the its natural source is basically processed. And so not all processed foods are bad. I mean, we'll talk about that in a bit, but when you get to the highly processed foods, that's when a lot of the additives and things change to the molecular level, and the nutrients change and may diminish and aren't as well as if it was in its natural form. So I wanted to bring up this handout that you guys probably picked up on your way, and it has 3 definitions of different levels of processed foods. I'll kind of read it out to you. But first, unprocessed foods. So fresh raw foods that undergo no changes from the plant or animal source it came to. So other than like peeling a banana or peeling the outside shell. So raw fruits, vegetables, nuts, those are all unprocessed, straight from its natural source. Next is minimally processed. So raw foods that are slightly changed in order from the original version to become more usable or available. So this was, at the turn of the century, as our technology got better, we're like, we can change the food so they're easy to eat. It's not such a hard process for humans to consume these things. And so examples of that is whole wheat bread, milk, yogurt, even like boiling eggs or baked potato. You're cooking it, you're transforming it. Potatoes you can't eat raw, but when you cook it, you can eat them. So those are some examples of minimally processed foods. And And then we also have highly processed foods. So these are what you want to keep an eye out. So foods that undergo considerable changes from their original form. So they're usually, easy, quick to go grab foods. You often find chips, packages, kind of those kind of things. And they also have a lot of chemical additives. So usually some type of preservative, which is usually comes in the form of sodium. You can even preserve things by adding more sugar. Other things you'll see is artificial flavors and coloring. So as they begin to change and manipulate that natural source, the color changes, or it's not the same flavor, and so they manipulate it to get that original texture or flavor or color back. So they add these things to it. They even add vitamins and minerals. So their enrichment program that the USDA put in actually has done great for our health as a country, decreasing a lot of the common deficiencies you would see. And so that's been a great thing that processing has brought about. Yes? They actually, I've heard that it has like a little poisonous component to it. There's something, if you eat it, it's very bitter, alkaline, and hard to digest.
Don't eat the eyes on the potatoes. You cut them out.
Yeah.
Those are poisonous.
Yeah.
So they eat raw potatoes, raw white potatoes,
You do?
raw sweet potatoes. Well,
I mean, that would be something to listen to your body if you felt uncomfortable. It's usually just a matter of digestion and any, like she said, the eyes on it. Yeah. Interesting. I've never had raw potatoes. Okay. So. Yeah. So examples of so white bread. So we'll talk about with whole grains. A whole grain is brown rice, is brown whole grain bread. But when you process the grain, you're taking out those components. So white bread is considered a highly processed food. When it says yogurt and milk, they mean the flavored milks and flavored yogurts, and even like non-fat yogurt. They stripped it of the fat and then they add in the other things. So, and even non-fat milk to an extent has gone through a lot of manipulations in order to become what it is. So that could use some clarification. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you could make those nut milks at home. Just blend up the nuts in water. It's like a 4-to-1 ratio. 1 cup nuts, 4 cups water. Strain it, and there you go. So it could be really easy. I mean, the ones you purchase at the store probably definitely go through more. If you think about a company having to produce these large, massive amounts, they probably created systems in order to make that easier and make such a large scale. But it can be hard to recognize, is this food highly processed? Is it minimally? So one of the things we recommend is to read the ingredients. So we're going to do an activity here in a bit to help recognize how processed is this ingredient. And so by looking, what is the first ingredient in the ingredient list? And that should be what the natural component is. If it's sugar, if it's something else as a first ingredient, it's been changed in some sort of way. Also, if you don't recognize words in it, you don't know what that means. I've heard people like, I don't eat it if I don't know what's in it. So that kind of thing. But any questions about processed foods?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I used to eat canned food, but I only like the soup, the chicken noodle soup. And I always say, because the doctors recommend, say when they give you a thing, say, oh, eat that soup.
Oh, yeah.
So it was good. It was 60 calories, something like that. So
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah. I remember as I was sick growing up, my mom would always give me soups. It's very comforting and easy to digest and nice. And not
And
heavy
it's
on
better
the
to
stomach.
make it your own, but sometimes when you wanna, like you are surgery, you just gonna do that, but I'm just
Yeah.
trying to how good it is to be.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have a lesson later on in our series about canned soups, and it's definitely got added sodium, and read the ingredients. You decipher from there. Yes.
I just wanted to share, when I used to teach kids and we would teach garden lessons, we would have a little challenge with the kids to get them to think of some food that didn't come from the earth at some point. Because the truth is that all food at some point either was a plant growing from the earth or was an animal that was eating a plant. And if, they would often say, well, hot Cheetos, there's no way those are plants once. But even hot Cheetos, like a long, long time ago, were corn. But a good rule of thumb is if you have to think really hard about what you're eating and when that was a plant or an animal way back when, then good rule of thumb is to try and avoid those foods. If you have to think really hard about where that food came from.
Yeah. And marketing the marketing on packages can be kind of tricky. You'll read natural flavoring versus and natural flavoring, it's still made in a lab by chemists, but it mimics a natural flavor in the world. So they're making a vanilla flavor or maple flavor, and those are naturally occurring flavors, but it's man-made. Versus artificial flavoring are flavorings that are made to mimic a flavor you don't see naturally, like blue raspberry. What is that? So keep in mind in marketing and reading, we'll talk about that later with whole grains, like whole wheat bread or certain types of marketing you may think it's whole wheat or brown bread, but really you got to read the ingredients.
All of a sudden, everything I see is gluten-free.
Yes. We should have a class on fats, like diet fats. Actually, I take that. Leah actually eats gluten-free because of health reasons, or people do have celiac disease, which is they are unable to digest the gluten protein in wheat. But it definitely has expanded from that and become like, I should give it.
Come from wheat?
Yeah, gluten is a type of protein in wheat. So as a baker, using gluten-free flour, it's a lot harder to use. It doesn't form the same texture because it's missing that protein that kind of binds it together. So you'll see different, you'll see gluten-free cookies, and it's definitely a different consistency, and it's just all missing that protein. There's other proteins in wheat. You okay there? Hey. But yeah, so gluten-free has definitely grown into a diet that doesn't really have too much superior nutrition to it, but there definitely are people who cannot eat the gluten protein. It'll affect their health.
But then I hear don't eat soy, don't eat tofu.
Yeah.
What's going on with that?
There's a lot of soy. There's a lot of relation to soy and estrogen, so people believe that soy will affect hormone levels, especially in women, and then even in males. I don't really know the research out there on how valid it is, but people do stay away from it because they're.
But the Chinese eat it all the time, but they have to be.
You have to be careful about eating soy because of the GMOs.
Yeah.
You have no. It's the GMO, the genetically modified soy that they sprayed with whatever the hell it's sprayed with.
Organic for that.
You can get organic soy that's non-GMO, you're going to be fine.
What about the tofu?
Same thing with the tofu. I eat tofu all the time.
I know the difference because some is supposed to be better for women.
Well, it's better for women
It's
because of the
a
estrogen.
protein
It's protein source, yeah.
And soy is it's one of the largest crops out there, same with corn. So they have manipulated it, genetically modified, in order to meet the demands of our society. And there's a lot of, controversy over GMOs, and we kind of try and stay out of that and just recommend, getting here. Anything organic will be non-GMO.
It'll take specific.
Yeah. And with marketing, people, if it's not GMO, they're going to be like, no GMO. It'll be very often.
And we believe.
I want to make a point of clarification on the GMO, that the reason that so many farmers have switched to GMO seeds is so that they don't have to spray the pesticides, because these are specially designed to resist the insects.
Yeah.
I know.
And
The
if
problem
you
is
don't want the
Roundup-
pesticides, you can go for the GMO and you know they haven't sprayed it.
Yeah.
However, the GMO corn that's been sprayed, so it responds to Roundup, has now gone beyond, Roundup doesn't work on it anymore. So Monsanto has really screwed it up.
So I think we're actually going to talk more about this subject in our food systems class. So we'll hold these very good comments for a later
One thing I wanted
class.
to say about soy is there is a lot of back and forth about, especially with women and estrogen. But I did do a little bit of research on it before class. And, excuse me. There's more studies that show that soy is actually beneficial to women during menopause than that show that it's detrimental in any way. So there hasn't actually been a lot of studies that come out that show that soy is detrimental or that it does. You know, there's kind of a lot of rumors a couple of years ago about soy mimicking estrogen and doing this sort of thing. And before I did this research, I was still kind of under that assumption. But there's a lot that has come out in recent years that shows that that is not the case. So soy, it's still something that we need to eat in moderation. But certainly a lot of Asian populations have been eating soy for generations and don't have the same cancer rates that we do. And certainly don't experience menopausal symptoms the way that a lot of women in America do. So it's not as detrimental to estrogen as women stop.
I drink the soy because I can't digest that dairy milk. So
Yeah.
it's like it tastes
Yeah.
better.
We have a handout, which I hope you grabbed, on dairy and about lactose intolerance. Kind of goes into that.
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think in one of our next classes, something we were tossing around as we were creating that dairy handout was providing a little bit more information on all of those milk alternatives and dairy alternatives, and just kind of guidelines on how to, what to look for when you're buying those things. So if you're buying the soy or the nut milks, don't buy the vanilla sweetened version, buy the unsweetened version, because all of those added sugars are going to detract from the health benefits of that food.
Yeah, and just to back up your point about GMOs back there, papaya. Papaya wouldn't be around today if there wasn't a modification in the strain to, But well, like we said, we'll talk about it. But you do have valid. So now we're gonna get to our activities. So we have 6 bags. So that'll be how many groups?
There's about 28 of us.
So maybe like groups of 5 you get in, and one of us, the volunteers, will be with you. And basically we have 6 ingredients in here, and we want you to put them in order from least processed to most processed. And
Don't use the corn handout. There's a cheat sheet.
don't use a cheat sheet in there. But really, and like I said, read the ingredients. And we'll bring up some points as we go over it.
You always say 8 glasses of water a day. Yeah. Oh, good.
So it's the better one?
None of the fast food stuff. I don't eat that no more. Yeah, hamburger, like a hamburger is like a meal. It has the bread, the meat, the vegetables.
Okay, thank you.
Then it has with stuff.
I think we're short on time, so Alana's trying to bring us back together. Oh, hold on, can't touch that. Nope, no touching.
So we use corn as an example. Corn is very versatile. You'll find it in tons of different things once you start looking. They've been able to, corn is, I love eating on the cob, but they've been able to manipulate it to become sugar, become a gasoline source even. So keep an eye out there and just a visual way to see how things can change, how we're able to process and change food. So, any cool observations you want to make during this activity? Any thoughts? Like Leah mentioned earlier. So, what was the most unprocessed or most processed? The soda. What Leah mentioned earlier about tracing that back to the original plant source, that takes a lot of would you even think it was related to a plant? But because the corn syrup, there is that kind of traceability back to corn. But speaking of soda, we're going to go into sugared sweetened beverages. So not only soda, there's many out there. If you turn to this handout, it's kind of got a bunch of array, and it also shows the comparison to how much sugar is in each type of drink. So we got the visual aspect here, but what really, when I first heard it, was a 24 ounce of soda has 22 packets of sugar. Those packets you see if you're getting coffee. Imagine 22 of those you're just drinking, and it's kind of crazy. So, sugar sweetened beverages, I kind of view them as a they're empty calories. There's really nothing beneficial to drinking it other than obtaining water. But you could drink water, you can add the lemon cucumber and get vitamin C with it too. You do get that sugar high, which people tend to love, but you get that crash after, and it's really kind of detrimental to our blood and our blood glucose and our insulin. So really staying away from the sugar highs and crashes. I heard on the news last night that they're saying sugar is more addictive than many narcotic drugs. And if you think about it, yeah. So we as a group really recommend drinking water as much, at least 8 glasses a day. Milk is also fine, so the low-fat version. And soda, in addition to the sugar, it has the artificial flavorings. If you'll notice phosphoric acid, that's a preservative. Think how it's able to maintain shelf stable at a room temperature. It's got sugar in there, which can break down. So it's got to have that preservative. The caramel color is just a fancy word to say artificial color. And yeah, I encourage you to check out the other ingredients on these drinks and kind of see what else is in there. But yeah, we recommend choosing your beverages wisely and not making them a food source. And really, you can make your beverages be very beneficial to your meal as well. So yeah, I stick to water, water and coffee. Okay, so finally, we are going to talk about whole grains. As we dish up our meal containing whole grains. Oh, the least processed is kind of the trick. What's this? It's a corn, because corn is not in season right now. You can't get it to be here. Corn on the cob. Okay, so whole grains. Can anybody give me an example of a type of whole grain? Amaranth. Quinoa, barley, whole wheat. What's in our snack today?
The best one
Brown rice?
is this.
Yes. So whole grains. Amaranth is a type of grain. So they're.
I've never heard of it.
It looks like half a grain of wheat.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
What's the one that, it looked like, what's the one with the cube?
Cute. Oh, quinoa. Yeah. Quinoa is, you know what it looks like? Very circular quinoa.
That's the person.
Is that a whole grain?
Yeah, the first meal we made, I don't know if it's actual class, we made a quinoa dish. Whole wheat bread, yes. So basically, what makes a whole grain? So we're going to use if you want to pull out this worksheet or handout we have, I was going to bring a little puppet to show, but we'll have to stick with this. So basically, we're going to go over wheat kernel, but like we said, there's other type of grains, rice, oats, the whole grains. And basically, there's three important components to it. There's the outer layer, the bran, which I'm sure you've heard of, bran flour, like bran muffins. And then there is the endosperm, which makes up the majority of the grain, the starchy filling. And then there's the germ. And I like to think of that as like the heart or the reproductive system that allows the plant to spring into more life. And so that contains a lot of protein and a lot of good fats, plant-based fats. So just to go back over it, bran, the outer layer, it contains B vitamins. It's really high in fiber, and it also has a lot of iron in it. So really good nutrients. It makes up about 15% of the grain. But when we process grains, they take off that brown layer. So what you're left with is the endosperm and the germ. They also take out the germ, and the germ is very high in protein. It's got the very good fats for you. It also has B vitamins, omega-3s, the good fats. So that's a very nutrient-dense part of the grain. But when it's processed, that's taken out. So all you're left with is the endosperm, which is just high in carbohydrates. There's a little bit of protein and a little bit of fiber, but mainly just carbs. So when you see white flour, white rice, what you're getting is just the endosperm. You're not getting that fiber-filled bran. You're not getting the protein, good fat germ in it. So what makes a whole grain is it to stay in that whole grain form, not stripped of any of its components. Any questions on that? The USDA recommends half your grain consumption be whole grains. So having something that is brown rice or whole wheat bread or oats. Those are all good sources. But it is tricky to make sure that an item is a whole grain. There's a lot of marketing that goes into it. It may say, natural, organic, 7 grain, but that does not ensure that it is whole grain. And so reading the ingredients, that first ingredient will tell you if it's a whole grain, if it says it in the first ingredient. And so in our grocery store tour, we'll be going over that and showing you for sure, and showing you different examples. And it'll be very interactive. Do any of you eat certain whole grains now?
Rye bread.
Brown rice?
Rye bread.
Rye bread. Rye bread. Bread. Yeah. Wheat bread. Yeah.
If we cook the brown rice in the white rice cooker kit,
some people do cook their rice with broth. It's great. It's great flavor. You just want to check the sodium in the chicken broth.
Right,
I
no
know.
sodium if it's low sodium.
Yeah. I think it'd be delicious. And yeah, so we have our snack for you. Do you guys have any questions about whole grains?
No.
And since I mentioned it, now that everyone's here, that grocery store tour we are having this following Monday at the same time as this class, 5:30. And then we're also having it the following Saturday at 4 o'clock. We have a flyer back there. And it's going to be at the Safeway on Webster Street right over here. And we chose this store because it may not be the most healthiest grocery store, but it's a great way to find the good stuff in, a clouded area where it might be hard to find good food and on a budget too. So we'll be going over how to buy and find whole grains at the store. So reading the ingredients will show you tricks in order to recognize it and notice it. You may think it is, but maybe it's not. We're going to talk about how to read a food label, so kind of what we did with the processed corn activity, reading the ingredients. We're also going to go over called comparing unit prices. So making sure you're buying something at the best deal, you're not paying more or less. And then we're also going to go over buying fruits and vegetables at a good value and on a budget. So deciding, should I get frozen? Should I get canned? Should I stick with raw? And there's a lot of factors with that. So it'll be a really fun tour. We encourage you. We have sign-ups back there. If you have any questions about it, feel free to ask. We also have the $10 challenge, so we'll be giving you $10 to spend. You get to keep what you purchase, plus recipes and all that. And it'll be a lot of fun. It's not mandatory, but we would love to see you. Yes.
Could I ask a great question?
Yeah.
Is couscous whole grain?
Couscous is.
It can be.
Is it a pasta?
Yeah, so you can find whole wheat couscous, but most couscous is not whole wheat. It's
actually
like
like same with
pasta.
orzo. It's more of a pasta and not a grain.
Okay.
Yeah.
And sourdough bread, is that, yeah, I know it's white, so it's probably not.
They use probably white flour.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think there's some studies that show that sourdough might be better for you than regular white bread because of the fermentation.
But it did look like there were scientific studies, so I wasn't sure.
Pasta? Yeah.